One of the reasons The Expanse has always stood apart as a science fiction universe is that its realism goes way beyond superficial. It's actually deeply baked into the setting. Even a passing familiarity shows us that space is hostile, that society is stratified, and we learn very quickly that distance really does matter in this setting, and on top of that, gravity is important in day-to-day matters. Heck, even orientation matters because, well, the sense of up and down is all over the place and never consistent. So, when we get to see gameplay for a new Expanse game, and we've got a trailer that's brand new just released, and it turns out this is actually a third-person cover-based RPG, well, there's immediately a number of pressing questions that I had, and some of you may have had the same questions. And this question for me is how much of the Expanse survives once it becomes a game like this? Does that setting actually transfer very well into a game? Well, on the surface, the Expanse, Osiris Reborn, is very easy to describe. We have squad mates, we have dialogue, hubs, choices, cover shooting, and yes, there's a whole load of obvious Mass Effect comparisons. And that is what most of the early coverage has focused on, and I've spoken about that in the past, and no doubt today you've also watched other videos saying the same thing. But after recently having the opportunity myself to sit through a full developer presentation on the game, I think the more interesting question is not whether or not this is like Mass Effect, but there's something much better that we can really be asking ourselves, and that is whether or not Alcat, the developers, are trying to translate the Expanse into a full-on Expanse-focused game, or whether it's mainly borrowing just the setting or simplifying everything else into a familiar RPG experience. And here's the thing, where this gets really interesting is that the answer to that question is not simple. And the reason being, there are real signs here that this is more mechanically thoughtful than a generic licensed game would perhaps be. But there's also a very clear sign of compromise, and the most revealing part about all of this in that presentation is exactly where those two things interact with each other, where they collide. Now, the first genuinely promising area is the RPG aspect itself. Now, in beta, players are going to be able to choose between two presets, one more focused on gunplay and one more focused on abilities. But the important detail is not the combat role, it is the origin of all of this, the fact that you'll be able to choose between being a belter, an earther, and that the developers have explicitly stated that those choices affect your social skills, your dialogue options, exploration, and even some loot access as well. And this can be quite important to the overall gameplay experience, because if being a belter, if being an earther or Martian or all the identity that are doing some heavy lifting here, they're really doing some pretty important work, because if that turns out to be true, then the Expanse is not just being used as art direction here. You're not just looking a little bit different because you're a belter or because you're a Martian. You're not just got different equipment because you're from Earth or from Mars. There's also a social layer going on here, and that's entering the game directly. And if that turns out to be the case, and it's looking like it is, then it really would be the sort of thing I would want from this setting, because in the Expanse, who you are is never just about flavor text, it's never just a few lines of dialogue that's attached to your name, or it's not just the colour of your uniform. It ultimately shapes how people speak to you, what doors open for you in that universe, what power you actually have, what you can attain, and how the world reacts to your presence. And that goes far beyond at the start of Mass Effect, just choosing which version of Commander Shepard you are, doesn't it? This is a very different thing indeed. And then there's the second promising area, which is combat. Now, this is where the reveal in the trailer could easily have flattened into something quite ordinary, just another RPG, a space-based game. And yes, to be clear, the developers are very direct here. It is all at the core a cover-based third-person shooter. I think we all got that impression very quickly and very early on from both the gameplay trailers that we've actually seen. So, the interesting thing here, however, that's going to change things a little bit, is they're strongly advising players stick to cover. And now if you imagine how this playing out, if you've got the ability to free float in 0G, and then you've got gunfights here, or people walking across with mag boots along the ceiling or along the walls, and, well, that's a lot of physical movement, that's a lot of spatial freedom, isn't it? And it doesn't appear to be what the game is, because how do you relate these two to each other? If you've got people flying around in zero-G, if you've got people walking around on the ceilings above you, then how do you tie that to a cover-based third-person shooter? Inherently, these feel like they could well be two different things. But it seems to me the way the developers are resolving this, the fact that you might be hiding behind a crate and then there's someone immediately above you that can see you regardless, is that there's a whole load of other things going on. And the developers talk about gadgets, companion commands, destructible environments, and most importantly, there's an active pause. And this slows time down to around about 10%. It doesn't full on freeze it, not completely, but it slows things down enough that you can take time to look around, to assess what's going on around you, and then perhaps place your abilities, activate them, reposition some of your companions, and think tactically about what's going on, rather than just quickly reacting to and shooting whoever's in your line of sight. And this, to me, is quite a big detail, because it opens up a lot of possibilities in this type of zero-G environment. Now, obviously, we won't know for sure until we get hands-on with this, but the through line here, the general idea, at least from what I can tell, seems to be that if things play out as I've just described, then it pushes the game away from being a straight action shooter and closer to being something more tactical, a bit more party-driven with you and your different companions, and also a bit more RPG-minded. And considering who are behind this, Owlcat Games, and these are perhaps one of the best known and certainly provide some of the best CRPGs out there, then this would seem like a very realistic direction for them to take. And that's the real question I have here. Which direction of those two is the game actually going to take? For me, from what I've seen so far, it seems to be leaning more towards this complex tactical side rather than the full-on action Mass Effect side. But, time will tell. I guess for now, the answer really seems to be maybe, slanting towards the more complex aspect. Now, there's another more encouraging aspect as well here. I've been talking about the areas I've liked through that presentation and what we've learned about the game so far. The third area is the companions, as well as the ship aspect of the game. So there are 6 companions in total, and you can take up to 2 with you in missions in the full game, and the others stay behind on board the ship. But here's the important thing, they don't simply vanish into the menu system. What the developers have said is that those companions can still remain engaged in the mission, albeit from the ship. They can advise you, they can be assigned roles or activities, and depend on what's going on, the results can actually differ. Now, I'm going to be careful here that we don't turn this into some deep fantasy, some, hype-driven idea of deep ship simulation. I don't think that's what's going on here. The presentation didn't really touch on any ideas like that. What we did seem to be told, what seemed to be going on, is that there was hints of something very valuable going on, and that is persistence. The idea there suggests that the crew is more than just an away team, and that the ship itself may feel more like an ongoing space that you experience the game from. Something a little bit more that you can engage with, that you can directly make use of. Something a bit more important than just a simple hub. And again, if that turns out to be true, well, that fits right in with the Expanse, doesn't it? Ships in that universe, after all, they're not just about transportation, they're not just about getting you from A to B. The Rocinante was not just a vehicle that the crew used. It was a home, it was a workplace, and of course it was very fragile but very powerful at the same time. All of these things pressing in at each other, creating that resistance, that dynamic that's instantly recognizable when it comes to the Expanse. It's also important, though, to be very clear here, because the question was directly asked whether or not you'll have direct control over the ship in a game such as in a game like Elite Dangerous or any other space sim out there. The answer to that is no, you will not directly be piloting the ship, but there will be a lot of cutscenes of the ship flying from A to B, and there will definitely be indications of the passage of time as you're on board your ship. And then we come to the part that I feel is the most interesting out of everything, but it's also perhaps the most questionable as well. Touched on it earlier, this is zero-G. So the developers have said that you will get the ability to go outside. You will have to explore the vacuum of space, and you will experience that vastness of space in the proper Expanse style. But they also say you'll always be using mag boots, or at least they made it clear that will be the case during the upcoming closed beta, specifically so that you don't get dragged far too off into space, that you won't be floating away into the deep, never to return. And that kind of tells you one thing that's probably true about almost every aspect of this game, a very challenging design aspect that the game is ultimately facing. And it's something that comes up when you're a game that's set in a very realistic sci-fi setting. Not just sci-fi in the sense of Star Trek or Star Wars, but hard sci-fi, where physical reality is a part of the identity of the game. And that means things such as inertia matter. It matters where down is. Down isn't always, down is negotiable. In other words, what this seems to tell us is that space is more than just the setting. It's not just a pretty backdrop with stars and a black void. There's all the other pressures from space that impact your decisions, because humans don't do well in space. And yes, that's a very essential theme to the Expanse as well. So yeah, when a game like this says that there is 0G, but you're effectively grounded through mag boots, what that suggests isn't necessarily that there's going to be a lot of failure, that this is the wrong approach to the game, but it does tell us that perhaps, just maybe, the developers are making a compromise here. Because in a world where you've got free full-on 0G and you can take full-on advantage of that, it perhaps opens up far too many possibilities to give us a quality gaming experience. And I feel that's a very good thing, because what it means is that we get to have the nice things about the 0G environment, but also don't have to worry about the things that would be game-breaking, because they're not just game-breaking in the sense of making a game uninteresting, they're also very breaking when it comes to how people have to approach moving around in space for real. These are all challenges that the TV show had to deal with, and they had to present them in a way that was suitable for a TV show. What I'm saying here is that the developers of a game also are facing the same type of challenges. They need to take that difficulty and convert it into an experience that is fun in a gameplay setting. So ultimately, the bottom line here is that no, I don't think the most interesting question about whether this Expanse game, that Osiris Reborn, resembles Mass Effect, I don't think that's the most interesting question at all. The better question is whether it can still feel like the Expanse once you start putting all these compromises into the game. And after the reveal, and after looking at the trailer, after talking with the developers and hearing all their answers to the various questions that were asked, well, I think there's enough here to really think seriously about this game. It's clear then that the developers have spent a lot of time thinking about how to adapt the setting into a quality game. And from everything I've seen, they appear to be going in the right direction. A very challenging and difficult thing to be sure. And, well, ultimately, I think what we all want, us fans of The Expanse, is a world that actually behaves like The Expanse, rather than simply looks like it. So let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below, because I will be checking those out. And you may have also noticed recently I've got a new member section going on the videos there, where I'll be taking some of the more interesting conversations below these videos and turning them into a members video. Do check that out as well. So thanks for watching this video all the way through. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.